Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm.
Well, hello everybody, and happy Tuesday night. Welcome to December. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. We had my mom and brother and a few good friends over. It was fantastic. Still eating food because I always cook entirely too much for just that reason. That is how much I love Thanksgiving. So I hope all of you got to enjoy a good Thanksgiving. I hope you all got to get together with friends and family and have good conversations around the table. We did, and it was fantastic. It's so nice to have those conversations again. We're going to be having some great conversations tonight. In our second part, we will be joined by our good friend Thom Reed, as well as his co-host Elle of the No podcast. We will be talking with them about UFO Experiencer misinformation. And what that means, folks, is there are a lot of interjectors out there in the world of UFO, UAP, and paranormal experience. And when you're talking about specifically family stories like the Reed family UFO incident, it gets called many names. Things take over, and sometimes the myth takes over the reality. And what happens when that happens? How does that change dialogue? How does that change conversations? How does that cast a light on so many different things? We'll be getting into that and the importance of getting those stories straight when it comes to experiencer stories in the second part with Thom Reed and Elle. In the first part, everybody, we are very glad to welcome back our good friend John Branddenberg. He is a plasma physicist. He was a team lead on the NASA Clementine missions. He has done all kinds of work in the world of plasma physics and propulsion, which is why we're having you on tonight, John. Welcome back to the show, by the way.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be back on your show, Chris.
Always, you are one of my favorite off-air conversations to have, John, because
well, thank you. I'm a strange character. I'm a curious character.
You are more than curious to begin with. But in addition to that, your grasp of so many things when it comes to physics, when it comes to the way that these things play on each other, period.
Yes.
Even when it comes to paranormal things like that is fantastic, and I want to laud you on that. That's the one thing that I love more than anything about our conversations is there are many touchstones that go along in there. And I guess a few conversations ago was when we started getting into exotic propulsion, things like that. And I was trying to find it because you had actively sent me a PowerPoint at one point that you had given on propulsion.
Yeah, I could send it to you again. It's fairly straightforward to explain. You must understand that the UFO/UAP cover-up has had a very paralyzing and distorting effect on the scientific process. And there's an ancient tradition on that beginning. It began even before there was a Catholic Church. It was the Greeks had figured out the solar system. They'd figured out that the Earth was moving around the sun. They figured out that the Earth was not the center of the universe. And then the Romans, and by the way, the person who ran around saying this in Athens was immediately arrested by the priesthood of Jupiter and Mars. And then the Romans, and they managed to get him out of town on the next boat so he wouldn't get killed. And then the Romans showed up and gathered all the Greek philosophers in one room in Athens and said, you can just imagine this Roman centurion was some other soldiers standing there beside him saying, the earth does not move because the earth is the center of the universe, because that's where Rome is.
Yeah.
Capiche? He says to these Greek philosophers, and then the Roman centurion says, are there anybody here who got any questions about that? And one Greek philosopher raised his hands, and the soldiers seized him and hauled him out of the room. And they said, the centurion said, are there any other questions? Meaning they were laying down the law. Rome was the center of the universe, and Rome was on earth.
Yeah.
And this is because when you talk about science on that, of that importance, it impacts political power. Knowledge is power. And you're talking about who is the top, who is the apex predator here? Is it going to be, the Roman Empire or the stars? And of course it's the Roman Empire. So
yeah,
that tradition in human affairs, which is then carried on by the Roman Catholic Church, which survived the collapse of the Roman Empire,
yep,
has continued now into the whole matter of what I call the extraterrestrial cover-up. It's not just the UFO cover-up. I don't like the word UAP, by the way. And it's also a Mars cover-up. In terms of Mars scientists, there's a meteorite cover-up. They're finding bacteria in meteorites, and that is being spiked. And you can't get that published in a scientific journal. And exotic propulsion, meaning gravity modification, which relates formally to unified fields which unify gravity and electromagnetism. That has all been paralyzed. It's like somebody has Novocaine the scientific community so that they can't advance. They're kind of paralyzed. And so it's been a very, this has been in some cases, a kind of a dark period for human science.
Well,
and so I guess I just wanted to say that
yeah,
my work on, there are four forces of nature that we've identified. There's the strong force and the weak force, not named by people of great imagination, but they're very short. They're like called atomic glue or nuclear glue. They hold the nucleus together. They hold the neutron together, things like that. But then there's the long-range forces of nature that stretch all the way across the universe. That's electromagnetism and gravity. And, pardon me, and that Einstein felt you could separate out those two forces and unify them by themselves. And other people, there was interest in that.
Sure.
And he worked on it for 30 years. But then suddenly people said, oh, no, you can't unify the two forces of nature. You have to unify all of them at once. You're ignoring nuclear physics. So what happened then was they came along with string theory, which is an attempt to unify all the forces to make a theory of everything.
Yep.
And as a scientist, I can tell you, you can't make a theory of everything because you don't have data on everything.
Yeah.
Nature has separated out certain problems that can be solved for a very practical outcome for the human race. And there's, and one of them is unification of electricity and magnetism, or electromagnetism and gravity. And this can lead to practical, a very practical outcome, and that is propulsion, anti-gravity. I will say it, anti-gravity propulsion, or
Sure.
and so the government, however, this immediately intrudes on the UFO cover-up, and because right now the government says, oh, nobody can do gravity modification, so that therefore if you see something flying around, a flying disc flying around doing all these impossible maneuvers, you're actually looking at the planet Venus, or a weather balloon, or something like that. I'll just let it go with that. I hope I've answered your I've answered your question.
Yes, and I say on the show all the time, there for me is there will always be a range of unknown quantitative.
Yes.
And that's just, and yes, we have to accept that in science. We were having the discussion pre-show, and we had it the other day on the phone, the whole situation with 3I Atlas. To dismiss outright the fact that it might, or that there's a possibility, even partially fractional in there, that it might be an alien probe or something like that, is foolish. Is it the fact that it's a comet? More than likely. But there's still that small percentage. Still that small percentage, and you have to accept that unknown. And that's what I laud, once again, Avi Loeb for, is the fact that he has the chutzpah as a scientist to not only hypothesize it and put it out there, but he has the chutzpah to stay behind it and say, prove to me it isn't.
Right.
You also have to prove to me that it isn't.
None of these people who are arguing so vociferously with him have landed on this object. Yeah. They have no samples of it.
Yeah.
And when they encounter something highly anomalous, they just say, "Oh, it's a fluke. It's an unusual comet."
Yeah.
Well, it is unscientific to rule out the fact.
That's right.
That it could be an alien recon probe. And in that sense, part of a campaign, apparently by somebody, to investigate this solar system, Oumuamua in 2017, the first interstellar object.
Yep.
People don't talk about that anymore because it was very anomalous. It was more like it was an asteroid. It wasn't a comet at all. Yeah. And when it flew in from behind the sun, so we didn't even see it, and then it flew past the Earth fairly closely on the scale of the solar system, and we only saw it after it had passed us.
Yeah, which is a regular thing. A lot of people don't realize that, John. The fact that most near-Earth objects we do not detect until they're around the distance of the moon, something like that, where it's literally like you could do nothing. There would be absolutely nothing that would be able to be done. Like while we were watching, and I'll bring it up on screen, but while we have been watching 3I Atlas, there's been like something the size of the Empire State Building that almost hit the Earth.
I know.
Zero eyes on it until it was like 3 hours away from impact.
Imagine walking out in the woods,
yeah,
and hearing a bullet, go by you. And that's our experience almost every day.
Well,
Zoom.
literally, it hit me one day, quite literally. We dropped my son off at school, and it just happened today. Whenever we picked him up, or whenever they came and picked me up, just before I went on air. But he watches the sky with me. He loves astronomy. He's into it.
Oh,
we go
wonderful.
outside with my telescope, all kinds of things. But we dropped him off at school one day, and in the sunrise, he turns around to say goodbye, and he goes, it was like the beginning of a horror movie, man. Not even joking. He points up at the sky and goes, "What's that thing? Is that a fireball?"
Ah,
And I look,
what
and
color was it?
it was just an airplane with a contrail forming behind it, but it was it was
okay.
at the right angle from the rising sun, where the trail was lit red, and
My
you
goodness.
could see the glow of the sun on the side of the plane.
Wow.
So yeah, like it looked like a fireball falling from the sky, and I was like, "No, thank God it's not, son." Like,
And some of these fireballs that come in at night, they're green.
they're beautiful. They're beautiful and amazing.
They are.
The bolides.
I've seen them.
Same here.
I wa-
And when
I
you
once,
experience it and you can hear them go overhead, it'll blow your mind. But yeah, it was one of those moments where it really hit me for the fact of, no, that's exactly how it would be. It would be a grand unified, like, oh my God, what's that thing? Is what the moment would be for NASA, for ESA, for everybody. It would be a conglomerate. Oh no. Because we miss these objects regularly. It's quite literally part of what the Atlas system was built for, was to recognize near-Earth objects and stuff like that.
Yes. Well, we were talking with some dinosaurs the other day, and they said, we used to run this place, and but we didn't have a space program or telescopes, and that's why we have to live in swamps, and you get to live in nicer places than we do. And I love to write science fiction now, and one of the reasons I do that is you get to writing science fiction is a slightly paranormal experience because it's been prophetic so many times, and so I wrote a science fiction novel, part of a series involving the same characters, and. Oh, asteroid misses Earth by just 300 miles. Oh, very
NASA
good.
only notices after flyby.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
August.
Zoom.
That was August.
Look what we discovered, and they talk about it as if they discovered it when it was 2 years away. Oh, no,
But that's
it
just
actually
it.
flew by us.
Bringing it back to Oumuamua and
Yes, I'm sorry.
Comet 3i Atlas, that's the thing, is that most of these things zoom by us and we don't see what they are because the satellites and the telescopes are tasked to other things. And they're tasked to those things months, sometimes years ahead of time, with very small windows and slices of what they're assigned to do during those times. So even the fact that we got the data that we got on 3i Atlas when we got it and we were able to retask and boot people and scoot things aside is amazing and great. Because frequently we would have gotten almost nothing.
I think the human race should pat itself on the back. I think I mentioned that the other day.
Yeah.
Because we retasked all of these probes. We have roving the inner solar system now at Mars.
Yep.
And on the way to Jupiter through the asteroid belt. And they were all able to track this thing. Maybe they weren't designed to take very sophisticated pictures of such small objects as that. They were to orbit planets and take pictures of, but the fact that we've been able to retask these things so rapidly, I really think speaks very well of the human race now and its abilities.
Well, and especially for the fact, like I said in the intro, you worked on the Clementine mission. You know exactly what it is to communicate with something at such a vast distance, and expect immediate response. But also B, what kind of odds you have of seeing something like that and of catching it with your instrument as your instrument's going this way and it's going that way. Like people forget. It's not like everything is parked at a Lagrange point, like like the James Webb is. James Webb is, but many satellites are not.
I just to set the record straight, by the way, I was merely a deputy to the mission manager.
Yes.
He paid me an enormous compliment, though. He called me his Tiger team. When there was a problem that seemed to stymie everybody else that he was working for him, he would assign it to me, and by the grace of God, I would find a solution. And but I joke, I said, I wasn't the deputy to the mission manager. I was a deputy. He was Marshall Dillon and I was Festus. Well, but we did get the job done, and we got, it was a very successful mission. By the way, we took millions and millions of images of the moon.
Yep.
And I don't think I saw maybe only 1 in a million.
Wow.
Of the pictures, because just because that wasn't our job. Our job was to keep the spacecraft running and healthy, and so we did a good job on that, and then NASA got all the data and has been working on it ever since. And it was very profitable, a very profitable mission. And I'm very proud of my involvement in it.
As well you should be.
Yes. And so it was believe it or not, the government is still a little sensitive. The moon is an important place.
Sure.
Let me just put it that way. I'll just leave it at that. The moon is an important place, being so close to the Earth. And the Russians have landed there. The Chinese have landed there. And we have landed there. And we're going to be, building bases there.
Yep.
It's also a place where there's a lot of helium-3, which is a fuel for clean fusion power.
Yep.
And it's just lying there like gold dust. All you have to do is pile it up in a pile and then ship some of it home, and you could run the entire country off of one shuttle cargo load. That was our example. In the days of the space shuttle, if you had one load of helium-3 in the back of a space shuttle, you could run the entire United States for several years just based on that energy. So it's a very valuable place, and so don't be surprised if some of the data from the moon is treated rather sensitively.
Sure. I have always jokingly said, no, we absolutely landed on the moon. We were just invited by the moon people not to come back.
Well,
much like any bad neighbor, you should just go ahead and go back. Yeah, don't worry about coming to the party next year. Earth
is considered lock your doors when you drive through this neighborhood.
Exactly.
And I will also say, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
No, I will also say that there's a principle that overlies all of this. All of this ET cover-up has to do with what is called mediocrity. Mediocrity is, that's in this case, in this context, mediocrity just means you're a C student, you're normal, you're average, it's like reaching into a drawer full of socks of various colors, and you pull out some black socks, and then somebody asks you, well, what color are the socks in the drawer? And they said, well, there probably a lot of them are black, because that's the first thing when I just grabbed in there blindly, I just got some black socks. And then you check the drawer and you find out 3/4 of them were black. It's just statistical argument. But what this also means is that the Earth and its favorite children of ourselves, the human race, we are typical in behavior and chemistry, biology, of life and life-bearing environments in the universe. In other words, there's a lot of planets out there about the size of Earth, and that's we found that to be true.
Sure.
We looked at the very closest star. The very closest star in the whole universe is Proxima Centauri, and it's got a planet that's almost exactly the same mass as Earth, orbiting it. It's orbiting it a lot closer because Proxima Centauri is it's a red dwarf, what's called. So it orbits a lot closer than the Earth does, but it still has the right temperature to have liquid water on its surface. So this just shows you that we are a very typical place.
Yeah.
But there's a downside to this, Chris, a downside. We know that the history of the human race is pretty dreadful.
Yeah.
There have been some really dreadful episodes.
Just a few.
Just a few. Just a few. And the idea that everybody out there in the universe who's intelligent and who has space travel like we've developed it is going to be our friend is unrealistic.
Thank you. Yes.
It is unrealistic. Some of them are going to be our friends. Some of them are not going to be our friends.
That was honestly the logic of Stephen Hawking. And what he said about the Voyager craft and the gold disc on it was, hey, we gave away the keys to the kingdom. Not only did we give away exactly where we're located, it would have been easy enough just to backtrace the craft.
Oh, yeah.
And just go in a straight line. You'd find it. But we gave them keys to our language. We gave them keys to our mathematics. We gave them keys to our genetics. Like, yes, all kinds of, like, this is the worst thing you could ever think of doing.
I know.
Because
Stephen Hawking was...
You're assuming the fact that because you're, of course, being, oh my God, the word just left my head. You're assuming the fact that in your humanistic way that an alien race is going to, A, think the same way we do, be the same way we are, and that, of course, that if they reached the point of interstellar travel, that they would have become enlightened, and not be more like, anthropomorphization, anthropomorphizing. You're anthropomorphizing the aliens to the point of what you think the perfect race would be. So that's a hope and a prayer at best.
Let us, we do, human society has advanced over the millennia. It has. However, morally, in a sense.
Sure.
But we must also remember this was a very rocky road. during the 40s, the most advanced technological nation on Earth was Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
And they developed technologies that were 10 years ahead of just about everybody else. And so just because you have advanced technology does not make you a nice person.
That's right. That's right.
And so, but anyway, I believe everything will be fine. And I really believe that because I'm a big fan of Star Trek, and I believe our future will look like Star Trek, that we will be invited to eventually join a community of enlightened peoples in the cosmos, a galactic federation. And one of the reasons Star Trek is one of the reasons I decided to write science fiction, because Gene Roddenberry, I found a deep resonance in how the universe was going to work, and I wanted to tap into that same vibe.
Well, and you could not have said something more poignant as to what I literally have highlighted on screen right now when it comes to the electromagnetic unification theory that you postulate in your work. And that is the creation of this correlated particle force field pair. A strong and weak long-range force and heavy and light changed particle is controlled by the deployment of a fifth dimension. And we met at the International Remote Viewing Association conference in Menlo Park.
Oh, yes, we did.
And Hal Puthoff was speaking there, and when he spoke of a case that I mention regularly on the show. Kathleen Martin had mentioned it on the show before I interviewed Hal, or before I met Hal and heard him talk at the conference. But it was one where a person during an experience went to touch the craft and they passed through it. And the idea of this dimensional energy, the idea of this vibration at which everything seems to meet, and that's where phasing occurs, where things would be able to pass through dimensional wall, through that meniscus, almost. And that's the easiest way to think of it dimensionally, folks, is if you look at a glass of water, there's the space outside the water and the space inside the water, and they're only separated by that thin meniscus of a few molecules of water. And that's us and the dimension next to us. That's the same way that suds are separated as bubbles in a tub that look like suds, but there's millions of them, and there are millions of tiny bubbles that are making that up, separated by a meniscus in the same way. So the idea of that vibration, that unified vibration that allows you to tap in, like you were just saying, tap into the vibration of something else, is a huge means by which you can begin to fold space and time, things like that. So
I will tell you of an interesting experience I had in this last year. I have been working on unified field theory, gravity, electromagnetism unified. And I made considerable progress. It's called the GEM theory, just gravity, E&M is the simplest way to explain that acronym. And Hal Puthoff worked on a very similar theory. And we came up with, our theories are so similar in some regards that we get the same final equations for flying craft. For gravity modification from them. But to give you a quick explanation of that theory, you have gravity, gravity and electromagnetism. Imagine at the moment of the Big Bang, they are one force, and then they separate with the deployment of a there's a fifth dimension that is that wants to kind of deploy, and it deploys, and by the time it is done deploying, gravity and electromagnetism are no longer the same force. They're two distinct forces. And what has also happened is the electron and the proton, which make up hydrogen, the most common element in the universe,
Yep.
they have appeared. Imagine there was only one particle and one force field, and then within 1 second after the Big Bang, and this new fifth dimension had appeared and become important, suddenly you have two forces and two particles, electrons and protons making up hydrogen, and you have gravity and electromagnetism. And the spreading apart of those things, the forces, force fields, and the particles, was according to this deployment of this fifth dimension. So the theory gives you something very similar to Hal Puthoff's theory, which is that crossed electric and magnetic fields, electric and magnetic fields at right angles, which is what gives radiation pressure. It's called the Poynting field. That is the unifying field, the remaining unified part of gravity and E&M and gravity, electromagnetism and gravity are connected at this Poynting vector. And then also the relationship between the existence of hydrogen and the existence of the two distinct forces gives you a formula that ends up giving you the gravitation constant, which is Newton's gravitation constant. If you have two rocks out in space, the force between them you obtain by the mass of one times the mass of the other divided by the distance, the inverse square, the square of the distance. So it's an inverse square law like electromagnetism. And then it's times this universal constant called big G, the Newton gravitation constant. And my theory gives that value of that big G to within a part per thousand right out of the starting gate. So I'm very pleased with that theory, and you can actually expand it a little bit further to include the meson and the let's see, it's the meson and the and also the which carries the strong force, and then the weak boson, which carries the weak force, and then it even gives you the mass of the Higgs boson. So it's not, I'll tell you, Chris, it's not bad, not bad. But
there's just a few intricate parts in there.
What?
I said there's just a few intricate parts in there.
There's a few intricate parts in there. Anyway, it was just, it's been a delight to work on, and I'm still working on it, developing it further. And but it also says that the human race will be able, well, what happened is we did some experiments in the lab where we found that we could affect gravity with electromagnetism. And what's interesting is the people who paid for the experiments was a very interesting little research outfit. And we discovered after we had gotten positive results that they worked for one of the Intel organizations.
Of course.
They were just, and they basically told me, Dr. Branddenberg, you made amazing progress. We want you to keep this progress experimentally under your hat.
Well,
and that was back in about 2000. And then, so I did that. I'm a team player. And then this last year, just about a year ago, I was told by people from the same agency that they wanted me to publish my experimental results, which are easy to do. I mean, we're not talking about building a flying carpet. We're talking about just being able to change the weight of things by milligrams. They weigh, like 100 grams. You can change them by about 20 milligrams, a very tiny amount. But then if you turn on the power, it reduces gravity locally, so their weight on a scale drops by about 20 milligrams. Then if you turn off the power, it goes back to its original weight. And so I was told to publish that, so I went out and did it. And now I'm preparing an article for a scientific journal. And then, so that was almost 1 year ago, I did that. And then in April of this year, the Science and Technology Office of the White House made an announcement that we could now change space and time.
Yep.
So they, a lot of people didn't notice that they said that, but I did.
Oh.
And what it is that the government has now gone on record from the White House as saying we can do gravity modification. And they did it after I published my results. So I took on that as a great honor, and I hope to help in the development of this further.
It is really interesting that you bring that up, because the other article or scientific document that I literally have up from the patent application publications is Method of Gravity Distortion and Time Displacement by Martin Pullman. And both of these documents, folks, just so you know, feel free to go to curiousrrealm.com/knowledge/studies. You can also find all that.
I will be consulting this and find out more about this Pullman guy.
But both of
who's
these,
pulling for this Pullman guy?
Both of these are right there. Just go click the title and you can get to them. There's the GEMS Gravity as well. But I put those side to side for a reason, because this was 2006 or 2004 actually that this was filed. And it's fascinating that because immediately when I started talking to you yesterday about things,
hooray!
I was like, I need to make sure to put this document
hooray for the human
up there.
race.
Because these are the kind of things that lead to those announcements. These are the kind of things that lead to that. Because yes, we can alter space. Can we like travel to 1964 and go quantum leap? No, not necessarily.
No, I don't think so, and I don't think you'd want to do that even if you could.
Neither. Me neither. That would literally be worse than the moment of when they ignited the first hydrogen bomb at Bikini and didn't know whether it was going to ignite all the hydrogen in the atmosphere. And we're like, yeah, go ahead, push the button. It would be worse than that.
I could go back to the moment when I popped the question to my first wife, the woman who became my first wife. I do it differently this time. But I've got these wonderful kids. Now, what's going to happen to them? Changing the past. I think God has wisely removed that ability from us.
Yeah. Now, granted, can we do things like that on a micro scale? Sure. Hey, now we're teleporting light in the lab. We're teleporting data, all kinds of things. So could we bend space and time to a point of teleportation, to a point of warp drive? Kind of like the Froning warp drive concept, which is also, that's the third document right underneath all of that, folks, is the warp bubble paper by Sonny White. So, and gravitational waves for stable wormholes. All these kind of things. These topics are out there, and these are actual studies. These are actual patents and ideas and concepts that physicists like Dr. Branddenberg have come up with. So yeah, it takes a faceted mind, though, to understand that this work has been out there for years.
Yes. Well, my first paper on this was published at a NASA conference in, I believe it was 1999.
Oh, wow.
And, it was the gem theory, application of the gem theory to the problem of propulsion. And so it's oh yes, well, the human race has managed to dig around and hop over and, dig under this barrier that was put up to tell us we couldn't do certain things, and that the human mind just rebels at that. And so now we understand, by the way, to bend space-time, that means gravity modification.
That's
Using
right.
electromagnetism, if you can bend space-time, that's gravity modification. That gives you flight, flying saucers, et cetera, to bend it into, then twist it into a pretzel, that gives you warp drive. And your own controlled, that's controlling the actual topology, not just the geometry of space-time, but its topology. Topology being what's the difference between a donut and a sphere?
Well, as an audio engineer, the easiest way to think of the topology is the sine wave of it.
There you go. There you go.
Is it long and rolling, or is it high and spiked? And
high and spiky,
what you're trying to do is get it high and spiky so that time is condensed and you jump over.
Right.
Whenever you go back, now you're over here as opposed to just being here. So yeah, it's an interesting concept to be able to once again generate a gravitational field big enough that the topology of space and time changes around it.
Yeah, topologists topology is a branch of mathematics. Topologists in math are famous for guys who at parties will take off their vest. They'll be wearing a vest under their coat, their suit coat, and manage to take off their vest without taking off their coat. They're great especially after a few drinks. They will always try and do that. But now they're going to actually get, real contracts to make warp drive.
Sure.
And the topology of space-time is determined by the general theory of relativity. The special theory of relativity says you can't travel faster than light. And we all know that specialist 4 is relativity is outranked by general relativity.
Yeah.
General relativity says we can do whatever we want. And yes, physical warp drive is now possible.
Yeah, and that's popular mechanics, and that is quite literally August 11th. So that is all of a few months ago that article came out.
All right.
So yeah, these are things that are just starting to hit headlines. These are things that are just starting to see the light of day when people like you have been working on these issues and these problems for decades. Decades.
I knew it was possible because I saw it on Star Trek.
Yeah.
So there.
Well, and that's just it. It really is that idea. And one of the concepts I talk about regularly, both here on the show and whenever I speak out in public, is the idea of quantum entanglement changing everything. It rapidly brought science down the realm of the paranormal and down the road of the paranormal because they realized that spooky action at a distance, Yeah, that is the root of things like telekinesis.
Well,
That's the root of things
imagine
like
at the
remote viewing, that kind of stuff.
imagine, Chris, that at the moment of the Big Bang, and I'm, the Big Bang theory is just fairly obvious. You just look at the galaxies as a movie going forward in time, and then you just reverse it, and they all go back to a point. Instead of an expansion from a point, it's a contraction to a point. Imagine that at the moment of the Big Bang, every particle in the universe was connected by quantum entanglement to every other particle. And that means that every particle, that you cannot pluck a flower on Earth without disturbing a star in the farthest galaxy. And it says everything is connected. And this is what, and of course, this is part of the riddle of they call it in Star Trek transwarp drive, even going beyond warp drive, to where basically you're traveling. Instead of Scotty, give me warp 11. You're basically traveling
ludicrous speed
instantaneously across the universe.
Ludicrous speed, like in Spaceballs.
Ludicrous speed.
We've gone plaid, sir.
Love that movie.
But quite literally, it's something that I talk about all the time with just people who don't understand how much space travel is in their daily life. Even the idea of a cell phone. And Neil deGrasse Tyson does a great dive on the Star Talk program.
Very good.
Never listened to it, but he goes into the whole...
I've actually had the pleasure of meeting him. I found him to be very pleasant.
Oh yeah.
And I had a nice chat with him. It was just like a 5-minute conversation at some conference. And but yes, he is a very great communicator of science now.
The whole idea behind the rocket equation is acceleration and propulsion. And what does it take to get a pound of payload, a 1 pound object? Like, hey, I have a computer that's 1 pound that fits in the palm of my hand. That takes 2 pounds of fuel to get into orbit. But each pound of fuel takes 2 pounds of fuel. So
imagine you have a pound of something you want to put into orbit, and then you have 7 pounds of TNT that go under it.
Yeah.
That's why rocket science is so interesting, and that failure on the launch pad is almost as interesting as success.
And rapidly more frequent.
Absolutely.
Than what you actively see or hear, because it's
a controlled explosion.
It literally
to get into space
now. But that's just it. That's why when people are like, "Oh my God, why is the Apollo rocket so huge to carry such a small capsule?" That's why. That's why. That's the physics behind it, and that's why we want to find out about things like the gravity EM superunification theory that you help pin, things like that, because that is what changes everything as we know it. Not just breaking the bounds of Earth, but breaking the bounds of physics as we know it.
Yes. Because it'll all be done. It'll all become commonplace someday.
Well, and I venture a guess, like the head of Skunkworks said years ago, we have the technology to take ET home.
I believe that he does.
The problem is there's no vested interest in that, John, and it's just like in the last Senate hearing that happened for UAP disclosure, George Knapp was talking about and actually, and rightfully so, praising some of the contractors Lockheeds
Yes.
and things like that, because they've done their job. Their job is to protect these secrets when given them and do what they can do to further humanity and the cause with that. Now, the issue is there's some of it that the only way science happens is conflagration. The only way science happens is cooperation between scientists. If you're not sharing data, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And like he said, I'm sure many of these contractors, Bass Aerospace, you know, all kinds of things, are looking to offboard at this point and find somebody that they can bring in to collaborate with so that they can actually do something with the rest of the technology, that because they can't release it, they can't do anything with it, and there's only so far that they can take it within an insular cavity of research. You know?
Well, you've also brought up an important point. They are kind of isolated from the rest of the civilization that we belong to.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we are in a situation now, if you've watched Age of Disclosure, and I urge everyone to watch it, we have a situation now where we have a constitutional government that's public, and then we have a secret government that is guarding with its own secret police.
Yeah.
And I have talked to two people in the last 3 or 4 years who ended up dead within a year of me talking to them. And it was said that they'd committed suicide, but the bodies were cremated immediately after their deaths so that you couldn't really do any detailed, and this is to a to a patriotic person who believes that the most important role of the government is our defense. The idea that has now been, and our foreign relations including the rest, with our foreign relations to the rest of the universe, we are now in a situation where the American public is just passengers on a big ship. We have no idea who is the captain of this ship anymore. And we have no idea where we're going.
Yep.
And this must end. I'm sorry, I have posted on X today that if the message of the Age of Disclosure is that the secret, that the UAP/UFO cover-up is not just a threat to our scientific world, it's a threat to our way of life.
Yes.
Now, we're not supposed to have a secret government with its own secret police. Now, this must end. Now, by the way, I am in favor of I understand we couldn't just go telling everybody after Roswell what the government had found out.
Yeah.
We had to have a cover-up. I understand that. But the time that was 80 years ago, and this has now become a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And we have to bring the public up to speed. There must be hastened disclosure. Because our entire it is a threat to our constitutional government now, the way things are being done now. The president isn't in the loop.
Yep. Yeah,
he's a need to know employee. They have a committee of 27 people who decides whether some people should be killed in order to preserve secrecy.
Yeah.
That's not the way things are supposed to run. Maybe maybe in a war, you have 007, you send 007 to bump somebody off, but we are not.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to change this, Chris.
No,
And-
absolutely, absolutely.
By the
And
way, I am in favor of a blanket amnesty for everybody involved in this, especially in the contracting world, who's going to help us
that's right.
bring the public up to speed. I'm in favor of blanket amnesty for those willing to help bring about disclosure.
Yeah.
And that's because I know they were just part of a big organization, and I know every government on earth occasionally decides it has to kill somebody to preserve secrecy.
Well,
I know that.
It's no different than our good friend and former guest before he died last year, Robert Duncan, who we would have on talking about targeted individuals and targeting technologies and things like that. He was helping. Yeah. He was helping write the algorithms and stuff like that until he found out what those algorithms were used for. Then he went whistleblower, and he left.
What happened to him?
He is now passed. But and yeah, it was.
We're not sure. We're not sure of the exact circumstances or reasons for his death.
Yeah.
Well, just to give you an example, during the Obama administration, in Afghanistan, they were targeting individuals in the middle of the night. Now, these Taliban leaders were at home in their beds with their wives, or, and suddenly a rocket would come through and destroy them and whoever they happen to be sleeping with. And I asked somebody, well, how, and he said, well, the people who are sleeping with them are rebel sympathizers. And so some of these people were even had been U.S. citizens. So I understand that. That was a war.
Yeah.
It was a war fought without any rules. It was a guerrilla war.
Well,
but we have to move past that. We have to move.
Well, the one thing I keep bringing up when it comes to all of the congressional panels and everything else, there are a lot of people in the communities that are very upset with them, John. And I keep saying you will not see the Houdini moment. You will not see them wheel out a gurney with a tablecloth on it and pull it off and go, here's the hand, here's the parts. That's not what's going to happen. What you're going to see is a closing of purse strings. You're going to see it because that's the only way it comes about. That's the only way disclosure with a big D happens, is legal disclosure, where we hold the people accountable, where we stop funding them. And that's when it'll be an Ollie North type character that has to stand up and say, yes, this happened. I was in charge. And we'll have my generation's equivalent of, I guess Iran-Contra was my generation. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old. Like, I remember watching Ollie North on TV.
You're a youngster. You're a youngster, Chris.
But still, it's one of those, like, it will be a banner moment, and it will happen eventually. But the contractors have done exactly what their jobs are. The scientists have done what their jobs are, which may be a compartmentalized, kind of like the people who made triggers for atomic bombs never knew what they were making. No. They were making, they put part A onto part B and sent it down the line, and then from there it went to Poughkeepsie, and part C got put on.
Exactly.
Things like that.
That's the way programs like that are supposed to be run.
That's right. So,
and the development of the proximity fuse during World War II was done like that. They didn't tell anybody what they were working. Only the people at the testing grounds knew actually what they were actually trying to build, and it was very successful. I read an account of a bunch of sailors they were part of a task group, and their task was to ambush a German U-boat and capture it intact. And they succeeded. And they ended up pulling aside with a bunch of sailors, pulling over to the side of this partly damaged U-boat. It couldn't submerge anymore, and they captured the code books. They captured the code machines.
Yeah.
They captured all of these parts, and they towed the thing back into port in Bermuda. Was in disguise, like it was just some fishing boat or something like this. And they told the sailors on the destroyers, if thousands of lives are at stake here, we cannot allow the Germans to know that their code books have been captured, their code machines have been captured. If anybody spills the beans on this, they said, we're going to kill you.
Yeah.
And we'll kill your families too. That was in World War II.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. They've already had thousands and thousands of U.S. and foreign merchantmen on the bottom of the Atlantic at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I understand that is part of a wartime situation.
And that was quite literally what Eisenhower warned of in his speech heading out. Like, he was the last general that we had as a president. And he said it like, hey, I took my oath to protect the Constitution, and we had to go around a lot of the Constitution to win this thing and to make this happen.
Yes.
But
yes,
if you don't rein this back in and chop this dragon's tail off now, it's going to fly and grow beyond what you will ever be able to control. And
we don't know the secret history of this. We don't know the situation they're dealing with. I for a long time I said, well, when I finally was working in Washington, D.C. and learned about the UFO cover-up, I realized, especially after the Reagan thing of, asking Gorbachev, if we're invaded from outer space, we'll be allies, right? Like in World War II, and Gorbachev said, yes, of course. That there have been times when they were worried that this was a war situation or a near war situation, apparently.
Yeah.
But okay, we understand that, but it's time to end that. Not only that, it will free up so much mental and technical and monetary resources to actually defend ourselves against some of the people out there who don't like us. Of course, there's some people who do like us, apparently. That's nice. Well, it's not surprisingly. They look like you, Chris.
Yeah.
Are you from the Pleiades by any chance?
Well, not that I'm aware of.
I was told when I was in Washington, D.C. by one fellow, he said, it was in the early 90s, and he said, I was sitting there in my office working on some intelligence stuff relating to Russian missile tests. And he walks in my office, he says, John, we know you know all about Mars. He says, so I've been talking to some people, and they say there are aliens down here on Earth who look exactly and act exactly and have the same blood types and genes as human beings on Earth. And people are concerned that they're getting security clearances. Do you have any ideas on how we could tell them from other people, from regular Americans? And I was working on a science fiction novel at the time about the UFO cover-up. And I said, well, use sniffer dogs. It was inspired by Terminator.
Yeah.
Where they would use dogs to tell humanoid robots from people. And his face lit up when I said that, and he said, good, that's a great idea. I'm going to go tell these people I'm talking to. So then he suddenly he was gone, and did I just imagine this conversation I just had in my office? And then a week later, he came back to my office with a big smile on his face. He says, "The people I talked to," he said, "really liked your idea, and they're going to try it."
Wow.
And and I believe, well, let's just say, I heard a lot of stories about extreme. Well, apparently we have cousins out in the stars.
Yes.
So those people apparently are very, very friendly to us. And then, of course, there are other people who are not very pleasant at all. And so anyway, we have the universe is a complex place, just like the Earth. Apparently.
That's right. That's right. Well, John,
just remember that just like the Earth is a complicated place. And by the way, just because we already know that just because somebody else in the universe looks like us does not mean they're our friend. Just a lot of those people are here on Earth. And,
right?
I mean, we got people who look just like us that are right here on Earth who don't like us. So just imagine, I'm sure they're even, when I wrote a science fiction novel called Morningstar Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up. And the subtitle was Absolute Secrecy Creates Absolute Power.
That's right. That's right.
And I got it approved by public. They just said, I talked to the people I was working with who worked for various agencies, and they said, go ahead and write it, and we'll take a look at it. And they got it through classification. They said, just make sure it's labeled science fiction.
That's right. That's right.
Just label it science fiction. And one of them complimented me. He said, I read your book. I really liked it. He said, how'd you get so much stuff right? You're not read into this program. And I said, I just connected dots and I just guessed. And he says, well, you're a good guesser, he says.
Right.
So anyway, in that novel, The Secret Government, it was written in 2003. It's going to become a movie. And it's two women bring down the UFO cover-up, as it turns out.
Well,
so it's two nosy women. They're both news anchors, and anyway, so I wrote that, and I believe that will help disclosure. It'll be a science fiction movie.
Well, I always love our conversations, John. They always, like I said at the beginning, they always go places. So thank you for your time tonight for the candid
I think you
conversation.
paid me a compliment.
Well, it's just the fact of all, like we always say on the show, all these things are connected, and they're all connected. We started with plasma physics and things like that, and look at where it took us. It propelled us somewhere else, quite literally. So the ideas that you put forth in your GEMS, gravity EM super unification theory, can be found. You can find many of the works of John Branddenberg, everybody, over at researchgate.net. Simply search John Branddenberg, and you will find all kinds of stuff, including his Sidonian hypothesis, all kinds of things. You can find the documents that we were talking about tonight, not just the method of gravity distortion and time displacement from Martin Polam, but also the GEMS paperwork and submission from our guest Dr. Branddenberg and others. You can find all that at curiousrealm.com/knowledge. Just go to the scientific studies and docs page. And that's where you can find those. They're hot links. You can download them. There are the patents, all kinds of stuff. Dr. Branddenberg, once again, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. I'll be in touch with links.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. And thank all you listeners for paying any attention to me at all.
Well, you take care. We will be in touch very soon with links, all that kind of good stuff. All right, Doctor?
Very good. Very good, Chris.
Great. Take care. Have a great evening.
Live long and prosper.
Take care.
Yes.
Always a fun conversation with Dr. Branddenberg, everybody. And, you know, it really is one of those, once again, the idea that physics is much further along than we think. The ideas and the technologies that are out there are much further along than we think. When we come back from this quick break, everybody, we will be joined by Thom Reed and Elle, who are the host and co-host of the No podcast. We will be talking about not only the Reed family experience that Thom and his family had, but the experience of the experiencer and the way that these things get obfuscated, the way that communities begin to back a story that may not actually be the way things went down and happened, and how that becomes part of active lore, and what that does to the actual conversation of not just the way experiencers experience things, but the way that those things get moved down the line as far as research goes. We will get into that and so much more right after this.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com, or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that quick break. Thank you so much for staying tuned, and also thank you so much to our sponsors, especially True Hemp Science. If you're a user of CBD products like I am, stop on by TrueHempScience.com today. They are your source for amazing CBD products. I have been using the products made by Christopher Lynch and True Hemp Science for at least the last 5 years, and traveling the country to dispensaries all over the place, it is by far the best CBD product that I have personally found. They have terpene profiles. Every part of the plant is used also. They use a spagyric process where everything from the seeds, stems, buds, leaves, every part of the plant is used, reused, combusted, and reused until nothing remains, providing an amazing, amazing product. Stop on by, check them out. TrueHempScience.com is the website that you want to go to. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more, and get two edibles on your way out the door. Are very proud to welcome back in this part of the episode our good friend Thom Reed from UFO Monument Park, as well as the amazing show which I have guested on, The No, which you can find on Rumble, you can find on all kinds of platforms. He is here tonight with his co-host from The No, L.I. Welcome to the show, guys. How are y'all doing?
Hey, fantastic.
We're doing well.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, thanks for having Elle on with me. I mean,
absolutely,
it's kind of cool. Yep.
I love our conversations whenever we get together, Thom, because they are always candid, frank, and the only way to put them is real. They get real quick. And the one thing that I love about you, man, is that you are not afraid to just call a halt to BS when it comes to the UFO UAP community, and especially when it comes to disinformation and defaming of people in the UFO UAP community. Your family is active victims to stuff like this with your experience with the Berkshire's UFO. So let's start at the beginning, Thom, real quick, before for any of our guests that are not aware of your case. How did your case first come to be, and how did it come to be actively registered not only by the UN but by the state of Massachusetts as well?
Yeah, that was you hit the nail on the head, man. Yeah, we've been a victim of a lot of mudslinging, and there's been a lot of misinformation. There's another person by the name Tom who was on the Netflix Unsolved Mysteries episode with me. So what he says, sometimes people think, well, Tom said this and it's a different Tom, and then everything that goes with that. It's just kind of a lot to juggle and try to make people understand what really happened versus what somebody else said with my same first name on the same show I was on, right? So it just gets muddy. But how this whole thing started, my mom opened up a diner in Massachusetts in the Berkshires, and it just happened to be down the road from a racetrack, the second largest racetrack to Saratoga. And with that, it was also surrounded by manufacturing facilities working on the Apollo missions. NASA was in Boston. A lot of money was being poured into the Berkshires. People were moving into the area to work at Sprague Electric, General Electric. Command Aerospace was there, Pratt & Whitney. And so all these people were all coming in from Hartford, Albany, if you will, and, Boston. And now they're in this rural area that didn't even have a FM radio station. And because my mother had a jukebox, they hung out in our restaurant. So those working on the space race were paying customers of my mother's.
Too cool.
And because she had just bought it like a year or so before, she needed to make sure she made a good investment. So she would keep the place open late. And so those customers basically had use of our family's diner until 10, 11 o'clock at night so they could have their talks, because it was a secret space program. Therefore, they couldn't openly talk about what they were working on while they shopped for groceries, right? So they needed a place or a hub or a spot to call their own where they could hang their hat and shoot the breeze. And that is when my family's incident in 69 got some traction, if you will, because of the circumstance we were a part of. And then, of course, we also had an incident in 67 and one in 66. So by the time this became everybody's hub for conversation, if you will, with regard to the space program, my mom would share what happened with our family and still had the news articles from 1967. I think I showed those to you in Roswell. So my mother, would show them the news article, from a year or so before. And because they were open-minded about it, they became who my mother relied on to talk about this. Not so much the locals, because, that just suspenders, the whole bit, there was a farming community, right? They weren't really open to, what was happening in the area. And of course, nobody liked the New Yorkers taking over their little village or town. And so we became more looked at locally as one of those who came in to work on the Apollo missions, because they became our friends, if you will, more so than the locals. So we were kind of ostracized locally by the locals, just as those who were coming, moving there and buying up homes back in the day and making more money than the locals. And so the whole thing just blew up in our face. And so anyway, when my stepfather, passed his bar exam, he moved to Connecticut, and he ended up being in office. He was a mayor, and was approached by Robert Bletchman, who was working with Muhammad Ramadan, the president of the Parapsychology Society at the United Nations. And he was asked if he would be willing to share what he knew about all of this, the space race, the conversations in our diner, the UFO sightings we had, what we saw, what we felt, what happened, what we could offer, from a personal perspective, and also that it was also over the Housatonic River. So could that also have played a part, or what happened with us played a part over the Hudson, because it was also, like 45 minutes away, and, our case was over water, had ties to space race. Now, the Hudson River Valley sightings are big. And so for that reason, hey, would you like to talk about it? And my father lost his life on the same day that our case was mentioned at the UN. So you've got a lot of moving parts, right? You've got the horse track, you've got the radio station that broadcast the incident back in the 60s, you've got the news articles, we passed our polygraph, it was mentioned at the United Nations in support of General Assembly 30-426. There was an idea that it possibly had ties to the Hudson River Valley sightings. And so with that, when my father lost his life, the Historical Society worked with an attorney by the name of Debbie Oberman and Debbie Kessler from the Kessler Law Firm. And they needed to mine for documentation, so they went to the Roswell Museum and Research Library, and that's where they pulled up a lot of the documentation, which ultimately went to the State Historical Society, along with the Great Barrington Historical Society, and to the governor's office. And so with that, and because my father was advocating something that was, had been trying for a lot of people in the area, that they thought, well, maybe we could do something for him. So they had this idea of a marker or, a proclamation, and that grew into a monument. And then, of course, we ended up actually getting inducted into state for having the first off-world incident in the United States, or being part of that. And how that happened was that, again, our diner had been proven to alter the natural progression of the community. Therefore, like Billy the Kid altered the railroad, my family's diner, in our case, was historically significant, and the event as a whole was true.
And once again, the fact that this went to the United Nations, that it went to the State Historical Society, and they bona fide it. You do not have a lot of cases, and of course, you guys reported it to MUFON. Stanton Friedman became involved, like all kinds of things. So
yeah, I think Stanton's the one who got me in the museum.
Oh wow!
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he's got a $10,000 telescope donated in his name at the park. Yep. With his name on it. Yeah,
too cool.
Yeah.
Too cool. And how did you come to become involved with Thom? Elle?
Well, I actually met him at the Spruce Pine, North Carolina UFO Expo. And I think one of the things that I did, like about Thom was he is straight to the point, as you can see. And, I did like bouncing ideas off of him. We began to talk about our experiences. I had a paranormal encounter, and that was, what my book was largely based on. And he began to talk about his encounter with the Berkshire UFO. And, I always felt that the paranormal and the UFO, they're one and the same. They're part of the para community. But one of the things that we did, I think kind of both, we kind of I'd say, jived on, was the fact that it's about the fact, and it's about being as accurate as you can with the fact, which I think that completely negates the idea of wanting to showboat or give misinformation. These are tough topics. These are, people die because of misinformation. This is not a game. Yeah. And, I think part of the reason why I think one of the big misperceptions, or the reason why there's misinformation, is because people don't take it seriously enough. There's like a lack of that realism to the whole thing.
I would tend to agree with that. I think that there's a lot of sensationalism tied up with a sensational topic to begin with. Just as somebody who comes from the world of media, things like that, like and the prime example right now would be like 3i Atlas. as of yesterday, as of the recording of this, folks, yesterday was the NASA panel where it was like an hour long. And I literally saw somebody on social media that was like, they didn't answer my question. Like, I asked them a question and they didn't answer it. They're covering up as always. And it's like, number one, they took exactly 5 questions, all of them from actual media people. Like, hey, NBC Chicago, what's your question? Not
and
like
I'm John from Facebook.
Nothing. Yeah. Not like Jimmy from Chicago. How about you? You know, and yeah, because they did not answer their question live on air, they're hiding things. Despite the fact that the European Space Agency agrees with NASA, that numerous space agencies agree with NASA that it is a comet. What it is a comet from beyond our solar system and from a location that predates our solar system more than likely, which makes it very awesome.
Know, if I can comment,
go ahead,
jump in here because I'm used to having my own show anyway.
I know,
so
but
it's like, hey, just a minute.
You're the guest. Go.
All right, it's okay. All right. So, you know what palisates are, right?
Yes. Explain them to the audience for us.
Okay, so palisates. It's kind of like a peridot. It looks very green, and look it up. Okay, comets, palisates, and there was a color lacking. You know, did it have too much iron? Not enough. You know, remember there were discussions about why it looked odd from a distance. Well, my feeling is that comet, because it is so old and it did come from so far out, that it has a lot of space dust on it, which would make this it's called palisates with an S. And in other words, the meteor or the comet itself gets covered in this green peridot-like mineral. And when it does that, it basically blankets the comet, kind of like if you took a cell phone and dropped it in paint, right? Sure. Now it's a different color, and you're not going to see it's not going to look the same from a distance. And when it heats up, it's not going to radiate the way it normally would, or you would think it should.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think originally there was such a discussion about it. But, Avi Loeb, of course, was pretty alluding to that it could be something else, and I never jumped on board with that. I just think it's a comet. It's coming from so far out that it's going like 3 times as fast as it should be, but it's been flying around for a very long time. It has a lot of different space dust on it, which has masked the outside of it. So it's not looking as typical as people think it probably should.
Right. But Thom, I think that's part of the problem. It's like, I don't want to say like a problem with neurology of people, but almost kind of like a misuse where people hyper-focus, like going back to what Chris said about, let's just say John from Facebook, okay, who said he didn't answer my question, therefore they're lying. And then the idea of, well, they hyper-focus on little things and they make something, I'd say they make almost like false connections. Like, for example, I can bet you any amount of money there would be somebody watching this right now, looking at you, Thom, and saying, because of the way you blinked a certain number of times, and because you're wearing white, and because your glasses are a strange tint and I can see something reflecting in your glasses, you're a liar. It's like, no, that's not it at all. So there's this, I just think people are, it's kind of like when you tell the teenager, this is not about you. Like people are very highly, they think too highly of themselves sometimes. And they have this pattern that everything has to revolve around them. It's part of their belief system. You could say it's egotistical. It's just very self-focused.
It is.
And you know what? I'm sorry.
No. I was going to say it is the belief system. We just spoke about that all of 2 episodes ago with our friend Anne Celine. The idea of if you're investigating either UFOs, paranormal, cryptozoology, doesn't really matter. What is driving your investigation? Is it your want of confirmation of your belief? Or is it the want of confirmation of experience? Or is it to actively try and get rid of the anomalies that are there and leave the question? Let
me throw this out there.
Go ahead.
So there are a lot of really strong personalities in this field, let's say.
Absolutely.
And you have a handful that make a mockery of it. And oddly enough, it's almost the clowns or the wannabes or whatever that for whatever reason seem to get the draw of people. They get a lot of hits, right? They get, and I think to myself, this is like Elle said earlier, this is a serious topic. I lost my father over it. I know I did. I can't prove it, but I know I did. It was a different time back then, but it is what it is. And so with that, I do take it seriously. I take it very seriously. And I think the topic is getting the attention it needs now. At least it's starting to. Things are starting to unfold, right? And with that, now it's like if you have a background in the military, suddenly you're here to misguide us. You're here to throw a monkey wrench in all this. And yet, if you were on Mars and got a candy bar at the underground convenience store, it's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't have the name.
Talk about the mistrust, and it's like this
all that nonsense that goes with
mistrust of authority.
Well, and I mean that was straight up shown not just after the first NASA panel, the UFO UAP panel that they had, but at the second one, where the head had to get up, and the first 5 minutes was literally like admonishment to the public, where it's like, are you serious, people? You've been telling us to get involved with this research for like 30, 40 years. And when these scientists who've been part of NASA for all of 5-6 years come around and they're involved with it now you're saying they're involved with a 50-year conspiracy to tie things up and hide them. And then you're making threats against them on social media. And you wonder why scientists don't want to be involved with your community?
Well, I think also, the, kind of this is what, the Thom's mission is to understand what happened.
Yeah.
And he went through loss, but he's trying to understand it. He's trying to process it. He's not here to say, okay, I'm here just to reinforce my belief system. Yeah. You encounter something in the para community, I'm going to tell you, your belief system gets blown out of the water.
Yep.
And I think anybody who's encountered a real paranormal event, whether UFO, whether ghost, whether consciousness, the knowledge that gets blown out of the water. And I think part of the hostility is it's a common theme of how people respond. When you have scientists, when you have people from NASA, when you have these people who their job is literally to understand how things work, you put them up against, and they can't help but be up against people who are just trying to reinforce their belief system. It's almost kind of like a given that they're going to be hostile. In a way, it's almost kind of like when you're going into it, you almost kind of got to expect it, and you can't really take it that personal. But it should stop. I don't know what's going to make it stop, but it's just this default hostility against people who are trying to understand from the people who just want to prove they're right is what I've.
Yeah, no, and that's just it. It's the fact of there is, and I spoke about it not too long ago at Symposium of the Strange in San Antonio. The idea that there is a constant, almost battle of paranormal researchers fighting against science. And like that's part of the reason that I founded Curious Research, was to help build bridges between these researchers and science.
Yeah, a lot of paranormal is science.
It's by definition science. I'll hold up one of my favorite books, which I actually got at the bookstore at MUFON. It's called Strange Phenomena. And it's literally a scientific desk reference, last printed the year of my birth, 1975. But this is literally like articles that go back to the 1700s about like swamp gas, the different aerial phenomena, ground phenomena, water phenomena, all kinds of things. And the reason why I say phenomena is because that's part of science. You have to actively in science remove the phenomena from your experiment.
So I'll give you an example, right? So I used to speak at Dragon Con in Atlanta, which is one of my favorite events.
Cool.
I've been there with Travis.
That's wicked cool.
You name it. Yeah. And so anytime I would be booked, they'd be like, "Oh, you're going to be at the Sheraton because that's the paranormal hotel." I said, "Well, since when are nuts and bolts?"
Wow, the Sheraton is paranormal? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Tracked up on radar and everything else. Since when is something, real that is so solid as this big and bigger than my car in my driveway, and I can throw, hit it with a rock? Since when is that paranormal? So I try to say, work with them a little bit by saying, well, sure. I mean, it travels in a way that's paranormal to us. Maybe there are tears or in time and space, or maybe it, can travel that way, but a craft itself is nuts and bolts. So why would I be in a paranormal hotel when you've got, William Shatner over here in Star Trek, and, at least something that's a little bit more fitting than Sasquatch and everything else. But at the same time, to tie this in, maybe there is a connection to that, right? Sure. Maybe, right? So, where I'm going. So maybe there is a connection, and I think that there is.
Sure.
But it's still ufology, or the topic to this day is still kind of looked at as being paranormal. Yep. And I disagree with that. I think it's nuts and bolts. And, I don't know why, when we get to the level we are, or the point we are, where we're starting to look at ufology, or crafts, if you will, UAPs, we're seeing them come out of the water. We're seeing what they can do. Now it's becoming more scientifically based, but now they're throwing rocks.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But when it was paranormal, when it really kind of wasn't, it was okay. Anything was a go, right? Everything with the stories, it was all fun.
Yep.
Now it's becoming
the illusion
more serious.
Of labels. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you think, though, it's more just a matter of, again, people are always going to be hostile towards something new or something that goes against their belief system? But let's talk about them being hostile towards something new. Do you think they're mistreating it because of the fact that it's just now being brought into the spotlight? Do you think that'll ever, we know UFOs have been here for like thousands of years, so it's technically not new, okay? But the way it's being handled is new. Do you think that's part of it?
I think it might definitely be part of it, especially again, especially the change from UFO to UAP. And one of the things that I say regularly is I am in support of that change. It was done horribly shifty, all kinds of things. Don't get me wrong, folks. And totally for the fact of like, oh no, we are not investigating UFOs. So sorry. Because they changed the designation. However,
it used to be UAP first.
Well, but that's the thing is that, much like you're saying it's paranormal, the problem with paranormal is everything's shoved into it. It's a box. It's a catch-all term. The example I give is Kleenex. If you went to a scientist and said, "Here's a Kleenex,"
tissue or a napkin.
It's a facial tissue, is what it is, and there's thousands of brands of it. There's different makes. There's single ply, double ply, pleated, non-pleated, patterned, lotioned, unlotioned, scented, unscented, all kinds of things. So that's what science wants: is that kingdom, phylum, species. They want orders of things and clear, concise definitions.
Structure.
So when you just say it's a UFO, 98% of things that you cannot identify in the sky, even as a casual observer, are a UFO by full definition. It is an object that's flying in the sky that you cannot identify. That does not mean it's extraterrestrial whatsoever. And to make all of them into extraterrestrial removes the fact of that 2 to 3% anomaly that we're really trying to get to, and now you're just shoving it back in a Kleenex box. At that point, you aren't differentiating it. And that's like one of the things I say is curious research is more red circles. We need more red circles, not less, because unfortunately, when we break a heart, like as a 30-year audio, video, photo editor, when I explain to somebody the trick of light or camera or distortion in their lens, what have you, it breaks their heart sometimes, but we need to remember that does not move the experience that you had of, oh my God, what did I just see? Or, oh my God, what did I just catch? So keep that experience. Know that it never removes that. That will always be there. Your keyhole will always be widened, and you'll always be looking for things now because of that experience. But when it's explained, what you've done is actively contribute to the scientific process. You have now contributed to what is known as the known quantitative. And when you contribute to the known quantitative, you are further narrowing the 1 to 2% that is anomalous and truly anomalous that we're trying to get down to and investigate. So the more we know about known quantitative, the easier it is for us to differentiate between known quantitative and that small percentile.
I can see that. I can see why people would be brokenhearted, because on one hand, they feel like the wonder's been taken out. I mean, I think there was a famous joke on, I think it was The Simpsons, where one religious guy said, science is like the person in the movie theater who ruins the ending. It's like, yeah, but listen, the fact that you understand means you can expand.
That's right.
I mean, the way I see it is you can have one experience, like you said, and you can look at it from multiple angles in an evolutionary sense over time. And the experience, the core stays the same, but the learning, the becoming, the seeking, that evolves. And for that reason, I would say that quantifying something doesn't limit it. It actually creates a platform for expansion.
Absolutely.
And there's always a part 2. You can always have a part 2.
Well, and like the example I give is myself. I had a religious experience at the age of 16, which led me to the seminary to study to be a Roman Catholic priest my first year in college. If it was later proven in my life that that was caused by some sort of petit mal seizure while I was serving at the altar, something like that just came, went, and passed, that would not remove that moment from my life. It wouldn't remove that moment where I had an epiphany and a revelation where it was like, wow, I need to consider this and think about it. Despite the explanation, the moment still happened. So
it doesn't matter how it happened.
It doesn't matter if it's like explained later.
Right.
It still happened to you. It's still no different than if, and our good friend Anne Celine gives a very personal example of a trauma that happened to her in her life that she utterly blanketed in her understanding of it being an encounter with something else. And it wasn't. It was somebody that came into her room and took advantage of her. She veiled it as that experience because it was less traumatic in her life.
So here's a question to both of you. So when something like that happens and over maybe a decade of time, 10 years goes by. And so now you've learned more, right? You have a better understanding, and you've talked with others and you've shared your experience and they've shared with you theirs. So now you go back to discussing what happened at the altar, and maybe it's a little different today because your understanding's different.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, somebody's like, he said this in 1981. In 1995, he said this. And so there's a lot of that too.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
I think go ahead, Chris.
No,
I've got my opinion.
Please, Elle, go ahead.
Okay. So the thing is, my response would be, duh. Like, if he's saying the same thing in, what was it? I think 1984 versus 1994, let's say, I would start to kind of be a little bit more worried about that, because I think that, to me, that's just a reflection of evolution in the person's thinking and becoming. If I could give maybe because people say, well, then it doesn't matter what I think. It's like, not really. Here's where I think it becomes an issue.
Go ahead.
If your experience is creating some kind of fear and separation, if it's creating a I would say like a stagnation of your own growth. If it's creating a spiral into self-importance and, you know, in other words, if you're actually using that to just solidify a belief system that you're not going to let go of and you're going to stay stagnant, then it's a problem. Then it is a problem. And on the flip side, I know somebody, you know, I won't, obviously can't name names, but I know, I had 2 students and I taught them about over 10 years ago. And I noticed with one student's writing over the 10 years, her writing had evolved. Like I could see the different voices and styles and the subjects. And I was like, wow. And at first she said it was really uncomfortable, but she said she really grew a lot as a person.
You know,
the other student, her writing stayed the same. And I was like, okay. But it didn't grow. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, and that's just it. It is that growth of a person over time. I literally just had a friend of mine from high school that we used to write music together and poetry and all kinds of stuff. And it would always blow my mind back in the day that we would be sitting at JoJo's having a cup of coffee and he would write a poem and didn't like it and would just throw it away. And I'd be like, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that.
I want to jump in too. So exactly. It's kind of like, you know, when you investigate something, are you going in completely unbiased or are you looking to confirm a thought that you had prior? So are you trying to solidify your idea of what must have happened? Or are you truly being open to the possibilities of what could have happened?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I bring up all the time, if you're going to go out and do paranormal research, especially at the same location, things like that, which is highly recommended because that's how you do science, is to wash, rinse, repeat. I know people are.
There you go.
I know people get very upset at Travis every time that he launches a friggin' rocket at the anomaly. However, the funny thing is, science is repetitive. It ain't sexy. It's repetitive. So when you launch a rocket and something happens, you know what you do? You launch another rocket and you keep launching them to see if the same thing keeps happening. That's repetitive numbers science. And the problem is, I'm one of those, if you're going to go out and investigate somewhere, you should not be hopping on YouTube and watching videos about it. You should not be reading books about it and getting more and more familiar with the story of the place, things like that, because you are actively just polishing the filter through which you're going to look at data now. You are no longer looking at that data from a truly scientific point of view. Now, granted,
it kind of goes back to if you're looking for something good, you'll find it in someone. If you're looking for something bad, you'll find that too. So you're going to find what you're looking for.
Now, granted, you know, in science, yes, like the same thing's going to happen, but in a different way, because in science, you're actively trying to poke holes in somebody's theory. You aren't necessarily trying to confirm their theory. You're trying to perform the same experiment in your controlled conditions to see if the same thing happens. So and you may read somebody's work. You may read the research paper they did on it, follow their experimental guidelines, things like that. But you aren't necessarily like jumping down the rabbit hole of lore to begin your investigation.
There you go. And I see, that's why I think, Chris, first off, I love that structure there, because that's why I think that's the beautiful part about science. And that's why all the more reasons science needs to play a part in the parrot community, because your brain over time, it does have a tendency to rearrange details.
That's right.
To misconstrue details. That's why in science, it's almost like it's your only backup to follow protocol and to kind of make sure that you've got this, let's say maybe checks and balances. Something to not to validate in a subjective way, but to validate in an objective way.
That's right.
The accuracy of something. Well, all the more reason why it doesn't make any sense why people are hostile towards scientists or the scientific method.
That's right. And no different than you shouldn't be, science doesn't happen in a vacuum. Research cannot happen in a vacuum. So the idea that you don't have a ride or die as an investigator, that you don't have somebody that you can give your data to and they will call you out if you have bad practices, if you didn't garner data properly, or if you didn't write down the details behind the experience, things like that. You've got to have somebody that you trust enough to give your data to, that when they question you, it's not an affront to you. That when they question your methodology, it's not an affront to you.
How, depending on who you ask, regarding maybe they've got a strong religious background, and suddenly, what they experienced was evil or dark.
Yeah.
And then those who are a little more open-minded or had an interest in the subject anyway, they lean in a different direction. And so you can see right from the beginning where they're going to go with their questioning, where they're going to go with their thoughts, and what happened to them. And, what happened with us, I've never said for a moment that, it was horrible or evil or dark. I mean, the on-world was worse than the off-world. I mean, we had more problems for those who lived in our neighborhood than, the night or two that, we had experiences. So, so I don't think just because something extraordinary happened, you have to live a life of, or have your life change completely. I mean, we all have things that we can't explain. And so when people say to me, how come you're not, crying on your way to the mailbox, right? Because, well, put on your big boy pants and, use that experience to grow it, grow your insight I use it as fuel. When I had this experience, my mother asked me what I want for, Christmas, my birthday. And I told her I wanted a camera so that if anything like this happened again, I'd capture it. And that launched my career.
Yeah.
So I think it's all in how you unpack what happened, right? And what you mine from, and you got to use that. And for me, I don't know what I'd be doing if that never happened to me. What would I be doing? Would I have been working in as an undergraduate?
Yeah. Well, and that's
what I have been doing.
That's what I try to
care, vehicle maintenance. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's what I try to explain about experiencers. I normally reference all the books behind me, and these are all by experiencers. They came to a point of writing a book, but when their experience most of these started off like a Disney movie. The first 15 minutes was not a happy situation. Something horribly traumatic happened to somebody. They were taken, they were abducted without their permission, what have you. They had an experience that scared them to death. They were confronted by a shadow being.
But you know what? I've watched movies and I've had a branch hit the window. It doesn't mean it was meant to harm me. It just startled me. It was a jump scare because it was the bad timing. I'm like, oh my God, but I'm still here today.
Exactly.
Those who have had experiences, they're still around. They're still doing their thing.
Well,
and now they've widened their understanding of what, we're all part of a bigger picture, man.
Yeah. And they've all processed their experience enough to a point to write a book so that other experiencers that have had their experience.
I've never written a book.
You haven't?
Yes.
No.
Not yet?
No. And it's funny you mention that because, people say to me, how come you've never written a book, right? And I told them I wasn't into this for the money, right? I was not, it's been 50-something years now, and I've never written a book. I just, so I've decided that it's time, and I've been working on one for a while, but I've never gotten it, really off the ground.
Uh-huh.
And so with that, if I can,
please,
I am writing a book, and Elle is going to be my co-author.
Too awesome. That is too awesome.
So we've been collaborating a little bit. I sent her some stuff, and she's given me some ideas. And so we're going to be working on, I think it's about that time, right? I mean, it's been a long time. I've gained some weight. I could have a heart attack tomorrow, or choke on a chicken bone, or be a victim of a drive-by shooting, whatever it is, right?
Sure.
I really think it's time.
Let's hope none of those.
Get it on paper, because it's been so convoluted. It's been turned into a circus, and that's the book cover. It needs a little bit of work, maybe something in the background bleeding through, but I think being it happened to us going through an old covered bridge. I was leaning towards that, but so Elle, if she didn't tell you, she is an author, published author, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but a graduate of with University of Chicago with a
That's correct.
With a degree in journalism.
English.
Right? Okay.
English journalism, and it's okay. It's okay.
All right.
It's all the same.
And so I think it's perfect. I'm hoping to get it done this year, 2026.
Yeah. And that's fantastic to find out, man, honestly, because it's one of those, that is how you pass legacy on. That is how you make sure that the family story stays around, things like that. And once again, your fervor with which you straighten out the family history and the story in the way that it has been convoluted and obfuscated by documentaries that have come in and literally taken your story and done other things with it. And now it's a prime example that's what people believe instead of the actual story from the experiencer.
Exactly. And then you got all these other people who are like, I was part of that. No, you weren't.
Yeah.
Just like Travis Walton knows who was in his truck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We know who was part of our diner. And people are like, well, how do you know they didn't come in for a sandwich? I don't know, because I was there every morning. Right. My mom had a cook make me whatever I wanted for breakfast, French toast, pancakes, whatever I wanted for breakfast. And I'd ride my little banana seat bike across the street to school. I mean, we had the same kids there all the time. And many of us are still friends to this day.
Yeah.
And but what I want to say is this, okay? Because I've never announced that Elle was going to be my co-author until today. So that's the first. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there were multiple events in that area, everything from cattle mutilations to crop circles, which all knows about. The police were, corrupt. They were working around a take from the horse track. So they didn't like someone moving in talking about UFOs and all this kind of stuff. And there's so many different things that took place there. And that why I've never talked about 66 or 67 is because it's already so confusing, right? So if you pull up that article again about our case in the 1960s,
yep.
The one that says 2 women pursue, right? Look at the date of that news article. All right, please. 1967, not 69.
Yeah.
That was our 67 incident. That's the one that got discussed with those working on the space race. I don't even talk about what happened in 67 because it's so hard to make sense of now with everything that other people are saying and, jumping on board with, if you will, and others, trying to, include themselves into something that wasn't even, had nothing to do with them. And so this is where it gets confusing now, right? Because everyone pretty much knows, or at least they think they do, what happened in 1969. But our case really started in 66, and then it made the newspapers in 67. And that was where our case ended up, being part of those who worked on the space race. And it was 69 that put a bow around the whole thing. So, that wasn't the case that sent us for a loop, right? That was the one that so many other people had seen it now because it was a holiday.
Yeah.
That they're like, oh my God, we're sorry. We're so mean to your mother. We're, sorry about all the fights at school. My so-and-so saw this and my uncle saw that. And because it was Labor Day, now we had an awful lot of people living near us who are now apologizing. So it was really 67 that is where everything just kind of went haywire. And so for that, I kind of, Elle, you've been speaking to Elle, she's relatively smart. Yeah. And so so when I talk with her, I'm like, because she's got a wide vocabulary. And so trying to explain things sometimes it's hard for me to write because I'm too close to it, right?
Yeah.
And so, she's brilliant. And I think she's going to be quite an asset. Yeah. And I'm also been speaking with a movie director. I've already been, flown to California. And there's talk of it being turned into a 3-film trilogy, which, so we have to write it kind of differently. We have to kind of write it in a way that it's easily converted. very detailed.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right. You can't say,
that's
my mother.
Be the challenge.
Right. So it can't be like, my mother pulled into this place and that happened. It's got to be, my mother, pulled in with her, Mustang convertible and, the rusty screen door slammed behind her as she walked into the weathered restaurant. So because otherwise, she could be driving a truck or she could have been on a Harley, right? You've got to detail everything.
Yeah,
exactly. What Thom is saying is the challenge. Writing a book is a challenge, as you're probably well aware. And for the people, the books that you have for those that the experiencers, first off, the act of writing itself takes a lot of, I think, maturity and intelligence and critical thinking. And second of all, if you're an experiencer, like Thom, for example, you could call him an experiencer. That takes a lot of bravery to even say he's going to write a book about it, much less talk about it. I say we probably know for every experiencer who's written a book, there's probably 10, and I'm probably being very conservative, who just said, it happened and I'm not going to talk about it because people are just going to look at me as they're going to shun me. They're going to call me crazy. And Thom, what he's doing is a brave thing, because people might say, well, it happened in 1969 and you're talking about it now. It's like, damn right he's talking about it now. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to talk about an experience like that? Like we took 14 years before we decided to write about our experience with consciousness. And even now, there's still groups of people that I would meet. I would not mention a thing about it, because I know that, for as much as we are in a group right now, we call it like a circle of believers. There's a circle of people who are just as skeptical and, if not downright contemptuous of people who have this experience. And that kind of brings me to just a question I want to ask all of you.
Go ahead.
I think part of the reason why these skeptics, let's just call them these non-believers, are so hostile to experiencers is because of the misinformation that's out there. And we can't solve it in this, podcast. And I'm guessing, Chris, part of the reason why you have Curious Realm is to combat that in some way. But how do you approach or, go up against those people who say, I think your experience is bullshit, basically?
I get asked all the time, would I talk about this again? Would I do it again?
How do you handle it?
I've been talking about this since I was, 8, 9 years old. And it was difficult, the on world was difficult. But then again, what worth having or what, message being told isn't worth the fight, right? So no one ever became a leader because they followed the pack, right? So sure, I jumped in with 2 feet and I was convicted and, and I'm like, I'm going to see this through. I just didn't think it was going to take so long. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's been a long time. And we had a lot of problems. And my brother actually, he stepped away, because of what you said, the mockery, the joking, he did an interview once where the reporter asked him, do you think they were reptilians? Do you think they were gray aliens? Oh,
no.
And where was this? Was it near your driveway? Yeah, it was near my driveway. It was near our house. And my brother was just trying to be open to, I don't know what they were. We didn't have a brand name for them this is long before, this is the 60s, for God's sakes, right? You know what I mean? And we're being interviewed about how we felt or looked at this when we were kids. Until the article comes out and it says, Matt Reed says reptilians landed in his driveway. He never said that. He just said they could have been this or that because I don't know. Yeah. And so now you've got that article floating around where Matt Reed says reptilians landed in his driveway, which he never said that. And then, we're trying to correct things. And he's like, Thom, I'm done. Yeah. This is ridiculous. This is not worth it. Yeah. And that's why my brother doesn't do interviews anymore. My mom has stepped it up a little bit because she's getting older and she lost her husband over this. And so with that and having Tim Burchett, Congressman Tim Burchett living down the road from us, I run into him or, we have conversations over lunch sometimes. Now that the topic is getting looked at a little more responsibly. Yeah. Right. Now she's like, okay, well, I'll step in, and I'll talk about, what we experienced, primarily about the diner and how some of the guys. This one guy jumped up on a table in the middle of our diner, right, and exposed himself, right, and said, "If you want to see something out of this world, Nancy, how about this?" Right, and the police were there all the time. And Galata, who was in Unsolved Mysteries, he's the one who pointed up and said, "That's my father," or something like that, a hunter or whatever in a gas station. His father was the chief of police of town. And he ended up having to have lunch there all the time to keep the peace in the diner because of the fights that would break out. Some of the guys would walk in, the locals, could get on topic a little bit, would walk up to the front door with manure on their shoes and stand near the front door so they could block it, actually, so people couldn't leave while the place smelled like horse manure. My mom would be like with the broom, "Get out of here." Yeah. Like something out of a commercial, like some silly commercial. Like,
cartoon, yeah.
And
you need a frying pan.
yeah, and there were plenty of those. But some of the things I think that are memorable, though, that is how the jukebox kind of became a key point in all this, because my mom would just dump change in that thing, and those who are a little more educated and those had moved into the area and had an open mind and were there, because of the Apollo missions and the space race and all this kind of thing. They enjoyed listening to the Stones and having, an oversized cheeseburger and listening to what we had to say, opposed to the locals who blocked the door with horse manure on their shoes, right? So the book is going to, unfortunately, be pretty raw. And I decided I'm not going to hold back. I was at first because I didn't want to offend anybody. But then how about how often you offended us, right? That's got to account for something too. So we're not throwing stones, we're just throwing them back.
Well, and making your story heard the way that your story is, and we've talked about that before, Thom, the idea that there are so many hit pieces that have been done over the last few years that have been released on various platforms. I mean, the one that this last year, the New York UFO documentary with Linda Napolitano and everything else. And like Peter Robbins was nice enough to let myself and Earl Grey do an episode on the actual lawsuit that they filed against Netflix for
I've spoken to
misrepresenting what and that was like right after they filed the law. He was like, "Please let me file the lawsuit. As soon as the lawsuit's filed, you're like," and it was, but it's one of those, and think what you want, folks. Either way, you're allowed to think what you want either way. But here's the issue that comes to bear whenever you do a hit piece like this about an experiencer, and that's the fact of.
And by hit piece, so those you're talking about the Netflix special that was really slandering.
Yes, very slanted, very pointed, trying to
by Bud Hopkins.
Trying to basically poo-poo all over Bud Hopkins' many years of good work with experiencers, and starting that conversation with experiencers. And what you end up having eventually is people that don't want to come forward, because if they come forward, they may end up on the other end of that, and it's not even about being on the other end of the microscope. It's about people defaming their name because of their experience,
or jealousy.
Yeah. And it's,
why would you be? But here's the thing, right? So many people want to be part of, I had an experience too, or whatever, right? And yet it's almost like there's so many other things you could want to be part of.
That you should want to be part of.
Why would you want to be part of this topic, right?
Yeah.
And I don't understand that, because the subject itself is exciting. Let's face it. I mean, we're making strides.
It is.
But take okay. So my UFO Expo got hijacked a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Someone took my brand and started holding events under my brand. And then I had somebody else with the same first name of mine start muddying the water with our incident and inserting himself when he wasn't part of it. Well, I don't understand why there has to be this connection to someone, right? It's almost like, well, we can't promote ourselves unless we take somebody else down with us.
Yep.
It's really an accomplishment that we've gotten some interest unless somebody else has to fall for me to feel like I've accomplished something. It's really weird, right?
Zero-sum game mentality you're talking about.
It's very strange. And so often I see that where, there have been some girls or women in ufology, and I'm sure Chris knows who I'm talking about, that have thrown stones at other people. And I think when they do that, there is this feeling like now I'm at a level or the same level of them.
Yeah.
So now they've catapulted their own self-esteem because now they're on an even playing field with somebody they're trying to take down, where if there wasn't that person there to begin with, they would just be, another blurb on social media.
Yeah.
Right. You remember when they tried to throw stones at Travis? If it wasn't Travis, no one would have given them, a moment's time. But because they were coming after somebody who's, up to the food chain, if you will, now they felt like, oh, I'm somebody because I can now challenge this person with an authoritative type of way or attitude because I'm just as powerful or as important as that person.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they do it. I can't think of any other reason, because if you had an experience of your own, that's personal to you. Our experiences aren't a competition.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not competing with anybody out there. Why do I'm just myself. I lost my father over it. It's important to me. I've made some very good friends that I wouldn't have made elsewhere or otherwise. Right. Unless I was in this field. And so I'm happy to have met the people I did and have the friends I do. And I'm finally going to write a book about it. There's no sparring. There's no competition. There's no throwing mud. So I don't understand the mentality of people today. It's like they got to be angry at something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of the reason. I think there's a different type of mentality with people who have actually experienced something versus people who have not. And again, I'm not saying this to speak separation. I'm just talking about patterns of behavior based on experience. And it seems that people who have truly experienced something, very rarely do they say, hey, I want everybody else to go through what I did, because a lot of the times it was pretty traumatic to begin with.
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
like, why? It doesn't make any sense for an experiencer, well, let's use that term, to say, yeah, I want everybody to go through what I went through. And it's like, if anything, a lot of times they say, I hope you don't go through what I went through.
Yeah.
Because it can cause some damage. And for that reason, I can see why I see the believers who don't write the book, the experiencers who don't write the book, they got a no engage policy. Live and let live. I had my experience. I know what I went through.
They're the ones who are legit.
Mm-hmm.
More times than not.
The ones that don't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are like, oh my God, I'm going to write a book now, and they're like, I don't, whatever.
Well,
hey, we got to be leaders and write the book. Anyway, you're saying?
Well, no, I was going to say that's the same in almost any public movement in that kind of way, whether you're talking Me Too, political things, what have you. It's the fact of if you're hearing the voice of 5 or 10 people, guaranteed there's about 10 times as many that are not speaking up, that are not saying anything.
And you know what? I want to mention this too.
Go ahead.
There's so many things that I've never talked about, or maybe I've touched on them once or twice.
Sure.
There are so many things that, Elle and I are going to have in this book that will blow people's minds. Like, I'm going to share a chapter with you. You want to hear about a chapter?
Please.
Okay. So, what one now? The one about the police and the horse, or the 2 girls, or what do you think would be the country club?
The police.
The police. Yeah, that was brutal. All right. So, wow, this is going to be okay. Okay. All right. So, we used to hang out at the horse track, the Great Barrington Horse Track.
Okay.
And so this one day I was there with a friend of mine and his girlfriend, Linda Farrell, who's on my Facebook to this day. And she's going to be in the book as well. We've already interviewed her on camera and everything. So they used to drug the horses. It was a fixed track, and everybody pretty much knew it. And so this horse comes running around the corner, stumbles, crashes through the fence, and lands in the midway. And there were thousands of people there, right? The parents watching the horse track and the kids going on the rides and, cotton candy, patchouli oil, bell bottoms. I mean, it was the 60s, right? I mean, this is actually the 70s, but I mean, it was the same type of flavor, right? Aerosmith in the background, Ferris wheel screams from the roller coasters, and this horse crashing through the midway. The jockey gets thrown. The horse is trying to get back up. Its legs are broken. It's dragging itself across, falling back down. The police come out and have to put it down, right? And Linda and I are standing there going, the track, it's fixed. They drugged the horses. And there were two cops there, Officer Holcomb and Officer Sinico. And so this is one of the first times that I got called out in public by the police, because they thought by associating myself and family with the UFO account, it would dilute what I was saying. So they were like,
sure.
Oh, don't listen to him. He'll tell you there's spaceships around here too, and there's aliens around here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, come on, man. What no, seriously, go to the stalls. You'll see the needles in the area. Ask anybody in the area. This is wrong, because I had horses too. We loved horses, and this was wrong. And so they were starting to listen to us. They're gathering around. And Linda, she was crying. She's like, yes, go look. She's the one who said to go look for the needles in the hay. You'll find them in the stalls. And sure enough, it came out in the papers later on that, anyway, back to the story. So Officer Sinico and Holcomb, they're like, get out of here, Tom, you and your UFO friends or whatever. Anyway, Holcomb walks by me, and the police, Officer Holcomb first and then Sinico, bang, bumps me really badly, like storming by me like I'm a kid, right? And so as a smart-ass little kid in front of all these people, I'm like, I'm talking to Officer Holcomb. I'm like, hey, how many half comes does it take to make a Holcomb? Right? So anyway, they beat the living crap out of me with flashlights. God. They even pistol whipped me. And they broke John's leg. Linda went running back to my house to get my parents, who took us to the hospital. We were left there in a pool of blood.
Wow.
And we ended up taking these two police officers to Superior Court. They were charged. And I still have the news articles. I still have the original news articles from when that took place. And this just goes to show you how our lives were, how difficult it was for us. And it's all documented. We were represented by the district attorney's office. I never talk about this, but this is what we went through. People standing up on tables, exposing themselves, people following my mom home, getting beaten up by police officers. So I wouldn't want this on anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, you were exposed to the seedy underbelly of this community from the very from the jump.
A heavy pistol.
You know? And that's just it. That's something that I try to explain to people all the time. I'm getting ready to write a couple of articles about it. Just the fact that there is a seedy underbelly to these communities. People, researchers who are willing to withhold research from other researchers, that are willing to, keep things from them so that they can, that's their research.
But think about this too. Back to the beating I took, right? These officers were in their 30s and 40s, and they were beating children and leaving minors bloody in a parking lot.
It was a different time.
Yeah. I'm so pissed about it. And I'm just, this is Yeah, it was a different time. I guess people got away with more then, but my God.
Horribly so. But
gotta get another Yoo-hoo.
It's one of those.
These things are great.
They're addictive. But when you're looking at these things, when you see these issues going on in communities, it's one of those you've got to address them. You've got to be willing to talk about them.
Exactly.
No different than the seedy underbelly of the convention circuit when it comes to these things. The number of people that are literally making a good amount of money hosting conferences and not paying the speakers or talent that come to their conference to speak. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating to me as somebody who began my career in the world of rock and roll and working with bands and things like that. If you like the band, buy the CD, because the bar didn't pay them. The bar made plenty of money they made plenty of money at the door, and they made plenty of money on drinks and probably some food if you're at certain bars.
I was a rarely gets any of these concerts. You remember that?
What's that?
Have you ever talked about that?
What's that?
Yeah. I was a stage manager for Northeast Concerts for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how I met so many people in the music business. But you're absolutely right. It was maybe we'll give them $600 to play.
If you're lucky. Yeah. Like when I had my acoustic duo, it was like, oh, no, we'll play for $150, a $50 bar tab and dinner. Like, but we gigged everywhere. But it was one of those being able to even convince somebody to give us that at this point.
I can see your guitar.
It was horrible.
I can see your guitar right there over your right shoulder.
That's my baby.
No, the other side. Right?
I see it.
You see it's right behind him, right?
Yeah, that's the lap steel.
Let me see it.
Nice.
It's nothing special.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh my God, let me see the bottom of that.
Musically inclined.
Is that metal?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's just a metal pick guard. So.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that work?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think I have an instrument that doesn't work.
Well, it looked like it was like mounted on that or something.
Oh no. There's a tiny little screw there so that it doesn't fall over. I've got cats that come and love on things in the studios. I've got an 8-year-old. So
hey, let me show you. You want to see my guitar?
Oh, your new one?
Yeah.
That's a sexy guitar.
So what we have in common is musically inclined and cat.
That's it. Oh,
I got a cat myself. So
see it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that! Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back.
But it's the idea that people are willing to make their living off other people's stories. People are willing to make their living off other people's work. People are willing to defame other people and their work so that they can make a living or ply their way in to the communities. They are willing to try and get the shoe drop on fellow researchers that they have been collaborating and working with. It's horrifying. What it sadly reminds me of, because believe it or not, folks, this exists in science too. Full on.
No, I believe it.
Full on.
It exists in the world of academia. Yeah.
I had friends that were vying for graduate level work at places like Chapel Hill and things like that for genetics research and pharmacology, all kinds of stuff in college. And yeah, they regularly sabotaged experiments. There were people that regularly had their experiments sabotaged because you're both competing for the same thing, and there's only about 10 of you nationally that are competing for it.
How many times do you find that paranormal investigators are attacking other paranormal investigators?
Yep.
Since when is it a competition?
All
unfortunately,
over.
That's an epidemic.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
That is a sad. Yeah.
And that's just it. It's one of those. It really does stymie the research. It really does create a community where people don't want to talk, where people don't want to have these open-minded conversation,
and I think it unfortunately gives gives undue justification to the non-believers, you know, and I hate using that term, but like the people that are just skeptics, the people that want to ridicule the experiencers, you know, and say that it, you know, UFOs don't exist and paranormal doesn't exist. But I think it gives them undue justification and fuel, because they'll look at the unprofessionalism and say, see, they're just a bunch of amateurs fighting over.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And actually, by doing that, the field itself is ruining the reputation of everybody's.
Yeah. Well, that's just it.
Or whatever it is, fact-driven points that they want to make. So in other words, you don't know what is real anymore.
Yeah.
You don't know. So you have someone who's speaking from the heart or had an experience like Elle, and now because so-and-so and this person or that person are now making a mockery of it, now that hurts Elle. At the same time, those who think it's all ridiculous or a bunch of nonsense, now they feel,
justified.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just it. You know, it really is the fact of it's hard for us to move forward when we're stuck in the quagmire of these things. You know, it really is the fact that this stuff detracts from proper research. It detracts from the good strides that are being made. Just to loop it right back to the beginning of the conversation with popular things going on in the community, 3i Atlas, the recent UFO UAP hearings in Congress, the recent, NASA panel that just happened for 3i Atlas. These things that become a divisive wedge in the community because somebody thinks of things in a different way, as opposed to accepting that there's a lot of facets to a gym. And without each facet, the gym doesn't sparkle, Right. It's still a dull rock without all the facets and without the facets being polished. So, yeah, you have to be willing to accept data that you may not agree with. You have to be.
So let me ask you this then. If you're accepting yourself and the mistakes you've made and understanding that perhaps you're causing more harm than good in a field that I think is at the verge of making some serious strides.
It's a cusp.
When do we hold these people accountable? When do we hold the Stephen Greers and the others who...
The Jaime Moussans.
Yeah. When do we start saying we don't need you in our circles anymore?
Well, and
I can
go ahead, Elle. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think sometimes, and this, depending on who you ask, they might. I know my partner, the Novi, would say destroy them, have a military strategy, and that this whole revenge thing. But I think sometimes the best way to do it is to write about the story. Is to refuse to be silent and to say, this is what happened. This is the data. Yep. Let the data speak for itself. Yep. In our book, our goal in our book was to talk about consciousness, for D.2010. And at the same time, we ended up, kind of calling out the people who use the knowledge to be important. But that wasn't our goal. It just happened to fall that way. Yeah. And it's like, so were you, somebody asked me also, like, were you attacking them? It's like, no, they were involved. We're telling the facts as accurately as it happened. This is what happened. This is how the group fractured. It's all there is to it. And some people might say that's revenge enough. And that's how you hold them accountable, by staying accurate to what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's just it. Data should speak for itself. And we in community have to, once again, be willing to call these things. I brought up Jaime Moussan because a buddy of mine literally just texted me yesterday and was like, oh my God, what's this boogosphere thing about? And I was like, A, way to catch up, bro. B,
it's been around a while. Yeah, I think even Stephen Greer did some more nonsense with that thing just recently. And
I was like, listen, my man, let's just look up Jaime Moussan. I was like, I grew up in Texas watching Jaime Moussan's Friday reports in the 1990s on Telemundo, where he was showing footage from Mexico City and things like that and questioning things. But when you look at him now, and when you look at the last decade, let's just say since like 2012, since like the fairy skeleton from Mexico, that was proven to be fake. The first round of Paracan mummies, which were proven to be fake.
And the one they stole from Roswell and sold tickets to.
It's time after time after time after time. And eventually it's the fact of you just got to trust nothing Jaime Maussan does or says. That's literally just the safest bet. The safest bet is to not trust it. And hey, when it comes to Three-Eye Atlas, they're small percentage of a chance. Could be something weird. However, 97% of the research shows that it's a comet. And I love Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb did exactly what science is supposed to do, hyperbolically hypothesize. That is the job of science, to say, hey, here's this thing. What if this? And thus begins the Einsteinian thought experiment.
It wasn't acting in a way that people could have been, it's like, well, it's slowing down, it's speeding up. What's with the lack of color? It was different. And I think being a scientist, you have to ask the obvious questions.
Yeah. And also understand that as opposed to, 99.9% of other comets that we've ever seen, this is not from our solar system. It's not a cometary form that we've ever seen or studied. So let's accept it as that, and let's move from there. But when you latch on to a small percentile statement, and even Avi now is, and don't get me wrong, we got to December 19th, something like that, whenever it swings closest to Earth. But it's still the fact of, to hear him say they're following a paradigm, they're following their story the way that they always would. It's like, well, yeah, because that's what the science shows, Avi. And right now, as far as Oumuamua goes, 0%. So his call about Oumuamua possibly being an alien probe, nope, no signals. Nothing like that. As far as the alien sphericals on the bottom of the ocean, 50%. I'll give him 50% on that, because he did recover some sphericals from the bottom of the ocean. Lab tests are still out. So that's a 50%.
So let me ask you this then. So,
but odds on favorite, he's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So with that said, Elle and I have been talking about the book, right? Sure. And how aggressive, I guess, and factually or hard hitting we should write this thing.
Yeah.
And at first I was thinking to myself, well, I've come across, abrasive or as if I'm sparring with everybody. But like I said earlier, we've been a victim of, a lot of, rock throwing and everything else, right? Mud slinging, whatever you want, how you want, or wherever you want. I'm calling it congested. But anyway, we've been under fire for a long time, right? And, if I tiptoe around what we went through and who did what, then I don't think the book is going to feel, genuine, right? Yeah. Because
I'm going to have to agree.
What we went through, there were, we responded in a certain way. I mean, we had to relocate, right? So, if we don't let it out there, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, or, what we're talking about are the details around my mother's, paying for and loss of her restaurant, which meant the world to her, and having to sell her horses and moving out of state and everything. We're going to have to highlight what happened, and we're kind of grappling with that a little bit, because how like the police thing, right? How we can't do it, half-ass. Where it's well, you know what I mean, and it's going to be it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings back there. But
agreed. But the thing is, I think this is why it's important. If you want to call yourself an experiencer, or just whatever you went through, I think this is why it's important for those that went through the experience to, well, be as accurate as possible without the fear of thinking, well, I'm going to step on people's toes. Like, there's strategically ways to write about it where you obscure the identity if it came down to that. But if you think about other books out there in history, like The Diary of Anne Frank, another book called I, Rigoberto Menchú, those talked about extremely harsh historical events, the Holocaust, and then I believe the guerrilla wars in Honduras. And neither author was writing about it to hurt somebody. It was just the way it was. Like, they were hiding out from the Nazis. She was hiding out from the guerrilla warfare soldiers in Honduras and witnessing the atrocities they did to the people there. She wasn't doing it to hurt people. And she was calling out, this is what the government's doing. This is what the foreign government's doing. And Frank was calling out within, what she was experiencing. Yeah. It's important because for those that don't experience it, I think it's important for them to get as accurate as possible of a picture. Not so much because they'll believe, but so they could say, okay, this can happen. This is possible. Yeah.
No, and that's just it. And, you give a great example, Thom, of honestly why our mutual friend, just the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, was told, Kathleen Marden was told by her aunt, like, if this ever happens to you, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody, hon, because this is what it's going to do to your life. It can ruin your life. And it's one of those, it takes a lot to come forward to begin with. It takes even more to put your experience down in words for future generations and for future experiencers to hear. But
you also have to do it for those who supported you.
That's right.
For your friends who
for your
don't
father.
Want to talk about it, but so they kind of live precariously through you and at least we're not going to talk about it. Well, we support you. Yeah. And then of course, personally, I still have a lot of friends who live in the area who still get mocked over it and that kind of thing, or, were picked on as children. And so by bringing this to the forefront in a book, detailing what happened also vindicates them as well, even, indirectly, but it was still in something that took place in their hometown. Unfortunately, these people were also unfairly treated by the same people who unfairly treated us. Yeah. And so with that, and some of these people actually live in the same town where our park is. And so we're like, oh my God, it's going to backfire. But at the same time, it is what it is. And I'm telling the truth. We're going to be, saying it like it is. And so I really appreciate how Elle was like, hey, it is what it is. Yeah. And so, God, I'd really like, by the way, if the listeners out there actually want to see some of the sample chapters, they're raw. They're not really finalized. They're on my website. Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
That is awesome. Is it here under 2026 book?
Yeah, pull it up.
Hey, look at that. Yeah. All right. And that's what's great, is being able to once again get this story out there in its entirety, in the most truthful way possible, without the zazz that other sources try to put behind it, without the interference that other people have tried to put behind it, things like that. So,
hey, by the way, pull that back up again. I think there's some actual, let's see, keep going. There should be, wow, those are just pictures at that point. Click on, go back up and click on what is it, full chapter to fix? Does that open up when you click on it? Huh.
I don't see an open on there. But that's okay, because those things are coming. So you probably just need
it should be up there. Can I ask you to look at something else? Do you mind?
Go ahead. What you got?
Go to let's see, ThomReedOfficial.com.
Okay.
I know I put him up there. I put him up there for tonight's show because I wanted to kind of, point out my co-author tonight. And
yeah,
let's see, under book. No, you're still on. Yeah, go to book. There you go.
There it is.
Yeah, we interrupt this broadcast. Keep going if you don't mind. Keep going down. See if there's a second one. The fix. That's the horse track. I was mentioned to you though.
And that's great. The fact that you're even putting out promo of this kind of stuff, pre-release copy, really does give people an inside feel to the development of this and what you guys are doing with it. So that's fantastic.
So Elle, jump in here with me. So our book project is to tell it factually, but it's not like a UFO book. It's a story about my mother's restaurant and how we were part of the space race, how we saw something, we're part of this extraordinary event that not only took place on this one particular day and Labor Day, which we're focusing on, but all these other decades. It's gone on for years. It's about, these children who stuck to their guns.
Ripple effect. Yeah.
Yeah. Stuck to their guns. Like you said, why see this through, right? When there's so much to overcome, when you try to accomplish the smallest thing sometimes, but how these children overcame everything thrown at them, and them and their friends to this day collectively made a form of UFO history. And that's kind of what it's about. It's not about so much of the typical kind of UFO, book you would read. It's more about an area, a family, and how something very factual took place in a very Stephen King type of town. How the town itself was different. This dynamic between locals and those moving into work in a space race. And then there's this UFO thing, which is really factual, and how it divided this community. And this family who had to endure all this was the only place where people ate. So they had no choice but to deal with these people all the time.
Right.
How they stuck
That's
to their
definitely
guns. Right. And how they stuck to what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, right?
Yeah, no, that's the richness of life in general and of any story. I think if you have a good story, I think part of what makes a lot of books around paranormal events so rich is the ripple effect of how it affected the people, the places, the time, and even like the future generations of the event that happens. In reality, it's almost saying, and for example, this podcast alone is proof that it's not really the para community. It's not the what of the para community that we should really be afraid of. If anything, we should treat that with respect and realize that there's more magic in the mundane than there is that we take it for granted. But I think the real scariness is the human nature of the confusion of the way people treat each other, the way people tear each other down, the self-importance, the self-righteousness. I think that's more scary, and that's what you really have to watch out for when it comes to anything paranormal, much less a UFO, including a UFO encounter.
Yeah, and that's just kind of wrapping this. It's kind of the scary thing about society to begin with. Just as somebody who studied sociology and abnormal psychology and subliminal psychology, people are smart. We're critical. We're critical thinkers by like definition as people. But once you get into humanity and groups of people, We are panicky animals and nothing more. It's like go throw a rock near a group of birds in a parking lot. And on occasion, you'll see one of them stay where it was and the rest of them fly off. That one dude, yeah, he's like the critical thinker of the group. The rest of them perfectly express the rest of them perfectly express humanity and the panic of the rock. You know, and the panic of the moment. And the way that society reacts. And that's what we're seeing is that side of humanity that is that panicky animal. That is that.
That was a really profound metaphor.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because it is that birds of a feather flock together kind of thing, you know. And even if you go out at like a Walmart parking lot at 5 a.m., I'm sure y'all have the grackles there the same way we do. But you won't see the mockingbirds hanging out with the grackles. They're in separated groups, and it's fascinating to see that. But they all react the same. They all react to the rock the exact same way. Doesn't matter the breed of bird, you know. And that is a perfect expression of humanity and the animalistic nature that we have. That the same way that we defend what we believe when we feel like what we believe is being backed into a corner, you know. You back an animal into a corner, you may just get attacked. And that's what we have to be careful of in these conversations. That's what we have to be careful of.
What do you think if we had Chris kind of proof some of our chapters?
He wants to, for sure.
I'll definitely read them.
Be awesome.
I'll read them for you, bud.
And he's a critical thinker.
And you know, with that in mind, as we close things out, let everybody know, where they can go to follow everything for the show, where they can go to find, because of course we've had the No channel from Rumble up there, but where else can they go to follow your podcast, The No? Where can they go to like, follow, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, guys?
Al, you want to run with this one?
No, I'd say, well, no, we are available on Rumble, The No. And I'd say also you can find us on Facebook as well. What's our exact handles, Tom? I know you got them.
Yeah, so it's actually The No, but that was actually taken on Rumble and YouTube. So it's No TV with Thom Reed and, of course, Elle. But yeah, primarily Rumble, you know, because we have a lot of interesting topics, and YouTube was flagging us a lot. So we decided to focus on Rumble. They're a little more lenient. Yeah. And, but again, it's No TV, KNOW, No TV, with Thom Reed on Rumble. And, we got some great guests coming up. We're speaking with, one of the, girls from Baywatch. And so we, it's a wide, variety of guests. We don't just focus on one particular topic. I think the idea of The No was for us to bring people to you so you could get to know them and know what makes them tick. And we all have unique, or things that happen to us, we're friends, and we become who we are through our experiences. And that's was the idea for The No.